Just quickly following up with a question from Ralph, who's asking us what exactly is a fair value area and how can we define it and use it in our trading. So first of all, thanks for the question, Ralph. Now, when it comes to fair value areas, we can quickly use the example of house prices as a quick analogy. So when you drive around in your neighborhood, you can quickly get a sense of what a particular house might be worth in your neighborhood, right? So based on its size, based on its location, and some of the visible features that you can see, so when you see an ad in the newspaper, for example, showing that the house is in the market for half the price that you would think is its fair value, you would deem that as a bargain and be interested in buying it. And if you see a house in the same neighborhood with the same features, exactly the same visible features that you can see, but you see it's in the market for twice the price that you deem as its fair value, then you would consider that way too expensive and you won't be interested in buying it. So in the same way, every currency will have a fair value based on what the market think it's worth. And finding out whether the currency is above or below the fair value comes down to the fundamentals and the sentiment. This is actually something that subconsciously you would have done already, knowing what a particular bias is for a particular currency pair. Whenever you see the pair trading much higher than what you would compare it to its fair value, you would instinctively think, but hey, this thing is a little bit too high or it's a little bit too low based on where you think it should be trading. Now, in the same sense, fair value is basically based on the value that the market thinks it's worth from a fundamental point of view. But we can also find useful areas on the charts itself where the price action has actually showed us what the market thinks is a currency pair's fair value in the short term. And that is by just looking at the most recent swing highs and the swing lows. So if we take a look at this Euro US dollar chart, for example, we can see what the market is telling us. The market is telling us that in the short term, it deemed that this level at that 110.20, it deemed this as a fair value area to the upside in the short term, meaning when it reached that level, sellers thought that, hey, this is a fair value to sell from. And the chart is also telling us to the downside, looking at this reason from the 107.40, when the pair reached that level, we had buyers coming in saying that, hey, this is a fair value area for me to buy from. So when we refer to fair value areas on the charts, we are basically just referring to the place on the chart where the market reacted from in the short term to either push the pair higher or lower. So in that sense, you can think of it as another way of looking at support and resistance areas or swing points. Nothing fancy really, just a helpful way of looking at the way markets have reacted at a certain price. So how we can use this to help us in our trading is by knowing where the highest probability places is to look for bargain buys and bargain sells. So if we see the market edging back to this overall zone, we would consider that a bargain to sell from. If we see it edging back lower into this overall area, we would normally consider that a bargain to buy from. Now, obviously, it is dependent on the sentiment and the fundamentals. So we're not just going to buy whenever it reaches the low and sell whenever it reaches the high, for example. We want a sentiment or a fundamental reason to do that. But it can also help us to establish when something is trading very cheaply, when something is trading very expensively. And it can also help us with our targets. So if we are trading this to the downside, for example, this overall area, when we get close to this area, that is a good spot for us to reduce some risk before we reach the zone. So just above that buy level. And then, of course, just below that sell level would be a good spot for us to put in any potential profit targets that we have for that pair on that particular session. So that is just a quick look at fair value areas and what exactly we mean when we refer to the fair value area on a particular currency pair.